Emily hurried out of the small bookstore in downtown Boston as rain began to fall, her coat barely shielding her from the sudden downpour. She realized she had left her umbrella at work, but before she could curse her forgetfulness, a man dashed out of a nearby cafe, slipping slightly on the wet pavement and bumping into her. He immediately apologized, his green eyes meeting hers with a mix of embarrassment and charm that made her pulse quicken. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going," he said, steadying her with a gentle hand. Emily felt a strange flutter in her chest, a feeling she hadn't expected from a simple accident on a rainy day. His name was Daniel, and she learned later that he lived in the same apartment building as her. Over the next few weeks, their paths continued to cross in small, everyday moments, smiles in the elevator, brief conversations in the lobby, shared laughter over trivial things that suddenly felt important. There was an invisible pull between them, subtle but undeniable, a connection that both thrilled and frightened Emily. She tried to focus on her work and personal life, reminding herself that Daniel was engaged, that getting too close could lead to trouble she didn't want, but every encounter seemed to erase her carefully set boundaries. One evening, when she returned from a long day at work, she noticed him waiting for the elevator and offered him a small smile. He smiled back, and that simple exchange left her thinking about him long after she reached her apartment. Their conversations were never flirtatious or forward, yet each word carried weight, each shared joke or observation lingering in her mind far longer than it should. Emily found herself anticipating these accidental meetings, feeling her heart race even at the thought of seeing him. Rainy evenings became more than just weather inconveniences, they became moments of subtle connection, a silent acknowledgement that their lives had begun to intertwine in ways she couldn't fully explain. Every time Daniel offered a polite compliment, a caring question about her day, or a shared laugh, Emily felt herself drawn closer, a magnetic attraction she tried desperately to ignore. She knew this feeling was dangerous because society, and her own moral compass, dictated that she keep her distance, that she not allow herself to develop emotions for someone who was already promised to another. Yet human emotions rarely follow rules, and Emily found herself wondering if the heart's choices could ever be wrong when they felt so real, so alive. The days passed, each marked by small, seemingly insignificant interactions that carried an emotional weight neither of them openly acknowledged. One rainy afternoon, Emily noticed Daniel standing outside the cafe again, seemingly caught in the rain without concern for himself, as if he was waiting for some chance encounter. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause, the noise of the city fading, leaving only the quiet acknowledgement of an unspoken connection. Emily's pulse quickened, her mind filled with thoughts she tried to suppress, the thrill of seeing him, the warmth of his smile, the comfort in his voice. It was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the distance she had promised herself, to convince herself that she was safe, that she was in control. The subtle dance of proximity and polite conversation became addictive, each smile, each brief conversation, leaving her longing for more while reminding her of the boundaries she dared not cross. Emily began to realize that life sometimes placed people in her path for reasons beyond logic or planning, and that the heart often noticed what the mind tried to ignore. She spent her evenings replaying moments in her apartment, remembering the tilt of his head when he apologized, the kindness in his eyes, the casual laughter they shared. She questioned whether it was possible to feel so strongly for someone in such fleeting encounters, and yet, the depth of her emotions suggested that this was more than a simple crush, it was a connection that touched the very core of her being. Every unexpected smile, every small gesture of attention, became a thread in an invisible web, binding her thoughts and emotions to him. She wrestled with guilt and excitement, the thrill of attraction clashing with the awareness of societal and personal boundaries. Emily understood that the feelings she had for Daniel were complicated, and that they could lead to mistakes if she allowed them to grow unchecked, yet she could not deny the intensity of the pull she felt. Rainy days and casual encounters in the elevator or lobby began to hold meaning beyond their simplicity, each one a reminder that life could surprise you with emotions that felt both forbidden and irresistible. Emily's thoughts became consumed with Daniel, not in a physical sense, but in the emotional and psychological spaces of longing, curiosity, and admiration. She found herself replaying his words, his expressions, even the sound of his laugh, analyzing them for hidden meanings, wondering if he felt the same subtle attraction. The tension of unspoken emotions created a quiet drama in her life, a mixture of excitement and fear, as she realized that their connection, though innocent in public, carried the weight of something deeper, something society might frown upon if it were discovered. Emily began to see that some bonds could form quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet still leave a lasting impact, changing the way she viewed her daily routines, her interactions with others, and her understanding of desire, friendship, and emotional intimacy. The more time passed, the more she understood that the heart does not always respect rules, engagement rings, or societal expectations. There was an undeniable magic in these stolen moments, a bittersweet thrill in knowing that some connections were simultaneously beautiful and forbidden. By the time she reached her apartment one chilly evening, soaked from the rain and lost in thought, Emily realized that the line between admiration and deeper feelings had begun to blur. She wondered how long she could maintain control, how long she could resist the pull that drew her to Daniel, and whether some mistakes in life, though prohibited, were simply inevitable because emotions were more powerful than rules. As she closed the door behind her, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile, acknowledging that life had a way of bringing people together in ways one could neither predict nor fully control, and that sometimes, the heart's choices, no matter how risky or prohibited, were worth noticing, if only to understand oneself a little better. That night, lying in her bed, she replayed their encounters over and over, each one a reminder that connection, even when forbidden or complicated, carried a depth that could not be ignored, and that perhaps, in life, some mistakes were not wrong at all, they were simply the way hearts found each other, in rain, in smiles, and in the quiet spaces between ordinary moments. The days that followed were filled with a tension Emily could neither ignore nor fully understand, and every time she saw Daniel, the pull between them seemed to grow stronger, subtle yet impossible to dismiss. It began with small gestures, like the way he held the elevator door for her, or the quick, knowing smiles they exchanged in the lobby, but gradually these tiny moments carried more meaning, stirring emotions she had promised herself she would not feel, and Emily realized that Daniel was no longer just a neighbor or a casual acquaintance. He had become someone who occupied her thoughts constantly, a presence that lingered long after he had gone, leaving her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and unease. Daniel, for his part, seemed equally caught in this quiet tension, never overtly crossing the line but allowing conversations to stretch, asking questions about her life, her dreams, her fears, as if he wanted to know everything about her without acknowledging that these moments were dangerous, and each time they met, the world around them seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them in a space where emotions could be shared silently, safely, yet dangerously, and Emily found herself thinking about him during her work hours, imagining his smile, his voice, the warmth of his presence, and wondering why a simple friendship felt so impossible to maintain when the heart was involved. One evening, after a local art exhibition, Daniel asked her if she would like to walk home together, and Emily felt a thrill she tried to hide, knowing the city streets and the glowing street lamps would become a backdrop for an intimacy that society would frown upon if it knew, yet she couldn't resist the invitation, because the pull between them was stronger than any rule she had set for herself. As they walked, sharing observations about paintings, discussing ideas and dreams, the conversation shifted into a softer, more personal tone, a vulnerability that made Emily's chest tighten with emotion, and she noticed the way Daniel's eyes lingered on her, his voice gentle, almost confessional, as he admitted things he had not said to anyone else, revealing his fears and hopes in a way that drew her in even more deeply, making her heart ache with longing and the bittersweet knowledge that these moments were fleeting and forbidden. The rain began again, softly pattering against the sidewalk, and Emily felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from the intensity of their connection, as if the world itself had conspired to create a private space where only the two of them existed, where emotions flowed freely, yet always on the edge of danger because of Daniel's engagement to Claire, a reality that hovered over them like a shadow, reminding Emily that what they were feeling, though natural and sincere, was considered wrong by society and moral convention, and she struggled with guilt even as her heart beat faster, caught between attraction and responsibility, between desire and restraint. At one point, Daniel stopped under a dim streetlight, turning to her with a seriousness that made Emily's stomach knot, his words careful, yet full of emotion. "Emily, I shouldn't feel this way. I know I'm committed, I know there are boundaries, but I can't stop thinking about you, and every time we talk, it feels like there's something real here that I can't ignore." And Emily, feeling the same forbidden pull, found herself admitting softly, "Daniel, I feel it too, but we have to be careful. There are rules we cannot break." Yet even as she spoke, her voice trembled with the awareness that their connection had already crossed invisible lines, lines that society forbade and morality warned against, lines that neither could fully resist because the heart rarely obeys reason when longing and attraction are involved. They continued walking, side by side, the sound of rain and distant traffic blending with their quiet conversation, each step bringing a deeper awareness of the bond forming between them, a bond that was both thrilling and dangerous, a tension that kept Emily's mind racing with what-ifs and maybes, with dreams of what could be if circumstances were different, and yet she knew that reality would not bend to their emotions, that Claire existed as a barrier that could not be ignored, making every shared glance and every soft laugh more potent, more intoxicating, more laden with consequences. As the evening stretched, Daniel's hand brushed hers briefly as they passed a puddle, a simple touch that sent a jolt through Emily, a reminder that physical proximity, even when innocent, could ignite emotions that neither wanted to confront fully, and she realized that their connection was no longer casual, that their hearts were entwined in a quiet dance of longing and restraint, a delicate balance that could collapse with a single misstep, a single word spoken in haste or desire. By the time they reached a small park where the city lights reflected on the wet pavement, the air between them was electric, full of unspoken confessions and dangerous attraction, and Daniel paused, looking at her with a mixture of regret and longing, as if he wanted to say everything and nothing all at once, while Emily felt her pulse race, her thoughts a whirlwind of desire, caution, and the impossible beauty of this connection, realizing that some bonds are formed quietly, emotionally, invisibly, yet leave marks that endure far longer than any physical encounter. That night, Emily returned home, her coat still damp, her mind replaying every word, every glance, every fleeting moment of connection, understanding that what they were experiencing was more than temptation, it was the awakening of feelings that neither could fully control, that society might call a mistake, yet in their hearts, felt inevitable and undeniable. And she wondered if some mistakes were simply life's way of teaching us about the depth and power of human emotion, about the fragile, thrilling line between morality and desire, and about the quiet intensity of love that grows in small moments, in shared laughter, in gentle confessions, and in the magnetic pull between two souls who meet when the world is busy looking the other way. She lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Daniel, knowing that their story had already begun, knowing that their hearts were tangled in ways they could not yet navigate, and understanding that the coming days would test them, challenge them, and perhaps teach them that sometimes the emotions society calls prohibited are the ones that teach us most about who we truly are and what we are capable of feeling, and that the beauty of connection lies not in whether it is allowed, but in the depth with which it touches our lives, leaving memories, lessons, and a longing that neither time nor circumstance can fully erase. Days turned into weeks, and the connection between Emily and Daniel deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated, their encounters becoming a quiet ritual of stolen moments and shared emotions that neither could fully express aloud, yet every smile, every glance, every carefully chosen word carried a weight that made their hearts race and their minds spin with the thrill of forbidden attraction, and though they never crossed physical boundaries, the emotional intimacy they shared became almost unbearable, a tension that neither wanted to release nor could fully resist. Daniel began to seek Emily's company more deliberately, finding reasons to talk, to laugh, to share stories from his day, and Emily, in turn, found herself revealing pieces of herself she had kept private, trusting him in ways that felt dangerous yet undeniably comforting, as if their souls recognized each other before their minds could approve, and this mutual vulnerability created a closeness that was both exhilarating and frightening, because each moment together was shadowed by the knowledge that Daniel was engaged to Claire and that society, morality, and conscience all demanded restraint. One rainy afternoon, Emily's phone rang unexpectedly, Daniel's name flashing on the screen, and though her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, she answered, and he spoke in a voice low and urgent, almost trembling, asking her to meet him for a brief moment, promising that nothing inappropriate would happen, just a conversation that could not wait. Emily hesitated, remembering her own rules, her commitment to boundaries, but the pull of curiosity and longing overcame caution, and she agreed to meet him at a small coffee shop, the kind that smelled of roasted beans and soft vanilla, a place that felt safe yet intimate, the ambient hum of conversation and clinking cups forming a cocoon around them. When she arrived, Daniel was already there, seated at a corner table, his expression unreadable, a mixture of hope, fear, and desire flickering in his eyes, and Emily felt her chest tighten as she approached, every step echoing the unspoken emotions between them, a quiet anticipation of words they both needed to say but had feared for weeks. As she sat down, Daniel reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly, a gesture that made her heart pound, sending shivers through her as he looked into her eyes with a seriousness that silenced the room around them, and in that moment, it was clear that the emotional bond they shared had grown beyond casual attraction. It was deep, consuming, and undeniable, yet forbidden, creating a tension that neither could ignore. "I hate this," Daniel confessed quietly, his voice low, carrying the weight of weeks of suppressed emotion. "I hate that I'm feeling this for you when I'm supposed to be committed. I try to stop thinking about you, but every day, every moment, I keep coming back to you, and it scares me because I know it's wrong, yet it feels right in a way I can't explain." Emily felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from the raw honesty of his words, because she had felt the same pull, the same helplessness in the face of emotions she could not control, and she whispered softly, "Daniel, I feel the same. I've tried to ignore it, I've tried to stay away, but my heart won't listen. It's unfair, and it's complicated, but I can't pretend it's not real." Their words hung in the air, mingling with the aroma of coffee and the soft chatter of strangers, yet in that corner of the world, it felt as though they were the only two people who existed, two souls acknowledging a forbidden truth that society would frown upon, a truth that could not be undone even if they wanted it to be. They spoke in hushed tones about dreams, fears, and the complications of life, their conversation a delicate dance of honesty and restraint, neither willing to cross lines, yet both revealing parts of themselves they had kept hidden from everyone else, and Emily realized that this emotional intimacy, though prohibited by circumstances, was a rare and precious gift, a connection that transcended the ordinary, the mundane, and the expected. Just as they were settling into the rhythm of conversation, the familiar sound of laughter from the doorway broke the fragile bubble, and both their heads turned instinctively. Claire had arrived, searching for Daniel, her presence a stark reminder of the reality they could not escape, and in that instant, the unspoken tension crystallized into clarity. The emotional entanglement that had grown so naturally between them was dangerous, fragile, and filled with consequences they were only beginning to understand. Daniel's expression tightened, torn between truth and obligation, desire and duty, and Emily, feeling the weight of what they had built together, slowly withdrew her hand, the warmth of his touch lingering like a ghost, a bittersweet reminder of what was possible and what was forbidden. She rose from the table, her heart heavy yet filled with gratitude for the honesty they had shared, understanding that some connections exist not to be acted upon but to be experienced, remembered, and cherished. As part of the human heart's complexity. Walking back through the drizzle-filled streets, Emily reflected on the delicate balance they were trying to maintain, the invisible boundaries they had not crossed yet, and the emotional storms they had weathered together in such a short time, realizing that some of life's most profound experiences are those that challenge morality, test restraint, and illuminate the depth of human feeling in ways ordinary interactions never could. The days following that encounter were filled with quiet reflection, stolen glances from a distance, and the subtle ache of longing that comes from knowing someone deeply without being able to claim them, and Emily understood more than ever that human emotions, though they can be complicated and socially prohibited, are relentless, persistent, and powerful, shaping our decisions, coloring our perceptions, and leaving lasting impressions that linger long after the moments themselves have passed. She thought about the joy of being understood, the comfort of being seen, and the emotional closeness that had grown between them, all while knowing that reality demanded caution, that Daniel had commitments, and that their feelings, though pure and sincere, existed in a liminal space where desire met conscience, creating a tension that was both painful and beautiful, frightening and exhilarating, and Emily realized that some mistakes, or forbidden emotions, are not mistakes at all. They are simply the heart doing what it must, exploring connection, longing, and the truth of human attraction. That night, lying in her bed, she traced the contours of the day in her mind, the expressions, the words, the soft touches, knowing that their emotional journey had reached a point of no return, a tipping point where feelings could not be denied, suppressed, or ignored, and she wondered what the next encounter would bring, whether it would be another quiet confession, a fleeting moment of intimacy, or a confrontation with reality that neither was ready to face, yet the anticipation, the longing, and the undeniable connection ensured that neither Emily nor Daniel would ever view their lives, their emotions, or the simple rhythms of daily encounters the same way again, because some bonds, though unspoken and socially complicated, leave a mark that reshapes hearts, perspectives, and the way love is understood forever. Emily stepped back, releasing her hand from Daniel's with a heavy heart, the warmth of his touch lingering like a memory she would carry forever, and she watched as he rose. Torn and conflicted, knowing that Claire, his fiancée, had arrived and that reality had suddenly intruded on the fragile world they had created together, and in that moment, the tension that had built over weeks reached a breaking point, a collision of desire, longing, and societal expectation that left them both breathless with unspoken emotions, yet bound by circumstances neither could ignore. Claire's eyes scanned the coffee shop, calm yet sharp, her gaze landing on Daniel and Emily, and Daniel swallowed hard, the weight of truth pressing down on him as he tried to form words that could explain, justify, or somehow soften the inevitable confrontation, while Emily, feeling the ache of emotional attachment and the sting of imminent separation, stepped outside into the soft rain, letting the drops mingle with the tears she refused to wipe away, and she walked through the streets, each step a reminder that some bonds are as beautiful as they are forbidden, and that the heart's desires often exist in tension with morality, loyalty, and societal rules. She reflected on the past weeks, on the quiet moments, stolen glances, and heartfelt conversations that had pulled them together, realizing that what they shared was a rare emotional connection that neither time nor circumstance could erase, yet also acknowledging the necessity of letting go, of respecting commitments, and of accepting that some mistakes are unavoidable simply because the heart feels too strongly to be guided by rules alone. As she walked past the park where they had shared their first extended conversation, memories of laughter, confessions, and gentle emotional touches played in her mind, and she understood that love is not always about possession, about being together, or about crossing boundaries. It is sometimes about knowing deeply, feeling intensely, and letting the other person live their life while carrying the connection in one's heart. Meanwhile, Daniel remained in the coffee shop, staring after Emily, his thoughts a whirlwind of regret, longing, and clarity, understanding that the emotions he had tried to suppress were real, undeniable, and yet prohibited by circumstance, and he faced the difficult task of reconciling his feelings with his engagement to Claire, realizing that every choice carried consequences, and that human desire, though natural and beautiful, often exists in conflict with responsibility, commitment, and societal expectation, a lesson that left him both wiser and more burdened than before. Emily returned home that evening, drenched not from the rain alone but from the emotional storm that had followed her, sitting quietly by the window, tracing raindrops as they ran down the glass, and acknowledging that some connections, though socially prohibited, are meaningful precisely because they are rare, emotionally intense, and transformative, teaching lessons about vulnerability, empathy, longing, and the fragile yet powerful nature of human hearts. She thought about Daniel, about the honesty they had shared, and about the quiet intensity that had defined their interactions, understanding that even without physical intimacy, the emotional closeness they experienced was profound, leaving marks on their hearts that time could not erase, and that sometimes, the mistakes society forbids are the very experiences that make life rich, complex, and deeply human. The following days were a mixture of avoidance and reflection, each of them navigating the balance between desire and duty, emotion and obligation, with Emily cherishing the moments they had shared while deliberately creating distance, and Daniel confronting the depth of his feelings while recommitting to the responsibilities he had already accepted, and though their paths diverged, the memory of their connection lingered, a quiet, unspoken bond that shaped their actions, thoughts, and emotions in ways subtle yet enduring, leaving both of them with the realization that love, longing, and human connection cannot always be neatly categorized, restricted, or controlled, and that the heart often chooses what the mind cannot rationalize. Emily began to embrace the lessons of restraint and emotional maturity, understanding that true connection is sometimes about holding someone in your heart without possessing them, about feeling deeply without acting impulsively, and about valuing honesty, empathy, and self-awareness over fleeting satisfaction, and she carried this awareness into her daily life, finding strength in the bittersweet knowledge that some relationships exist to teach, to awaken emotion, and to illuminate the depth of human feeling rather than to culminate in romance or permanence. She realized that Daniel, too, would carry the memory of their shared emotional intimacy, and that their paths had intersected for reasons beyond mere coincidence, leaving them both changed, more aware of the fragility and beauty of human hearts, and more respectful of the invisible lines that govern relationships, society, and personal morality. Emily's nights were filled with contemplation, dreams that blurred reality and memory, and a quiet acceptance that while some mistakes are prohibited, the emotions they stir are undeniable, unforgettable, and formative, shaping the way one views love, desire, and human connection for years to come. And she came to understand that living with the memory of a meaningful emotional bond is not a failure, a sin, or a regret, but a testament to the heart's capacity for depth, empathy, and resilience. She embraced the truth that life's most profound lessons often come wrapped in the form of emotions society disapproves of, that longing, heartbreak, and forbidden connection can coexist with morality, and that human beings are capable of feeling, learning, and growing through experiences that defy expectations, challenge rules, and test the limits of the heart. Emily looked forward to the future with a quiet strength, knowing that the memories of Daniel, the laughter, the confessions, and the tender emotions would remain with her, a constant reminder of the intensity of human connection, the complexity of desire, and the beauty of experiencing something deeply emotional even when it cannot be acted upon. And she understood that some mistakes, though socially prohibited, are the ones that shape lives, reveal truths about human nature, and leave an indelible mark on the heart, teaching resilience, compassion, and the value of emotional honesty. She accepted that love, in all its forms, does not always follow rules, timelines, or societal approval, but it remains meaningful, transformative, and unforgettable. And in this quiet understanding, Emily found peace, clarity, and a renewed appreciation for the profound, complicated, and beautiful ways that hearts connect, even when circumstances dictate restraint. And she walked forward in life carrying the richness of emotion, the lessons of desire, and the enduring impact of a connection that, though forbidden, was real, human, and deeply significant.